It was 2 glide in the morning when my phone vibrated on the nightstand. My eyes fluttered open, still half lost in a dream where Arthur, my late husband, was making me coffee, just like he always did on Sundays. The cold light of the screen cut through the darkness of my small bedroom, making me squint. It was Julian, my son. I answered immediately. A call at this hour could only mean one thing: an emergency. His voice was frantic, breathless, as if he'd just run a marathon. Mom, you need to listen. I'm in serious trouble. Your card was declined at the hotel. I need $9,000 right now, or they won't let me leave. They're threatening to call the police. Please, Mom, you have to send the money now. I pushed myself up in bed, the old mattress creaking its familiar tune, a sound that had accompanied me for 15 years. My gaze drifted around the room. The cream-colored walls I'd painted myself 3 summers ago. The antique dresser inherited from my mother with its worn handles. Arthur's photo in a silver frame beside the electric candle I always kept lit. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air drift in through the window I'd left ajar. Julian's voice escalated, a mix of pleading and demanding. Mom, are you listening? Caroline is here with me. She's crying. Imagine the humiliation. The hotel manager practically has us detained at the front desk. This is a 5-star resort in Las Vegas. You can't let us go through this embarrassment. Just send the money, and we'll fix it tomorrow. I closed my eyes. I saw Julian at 5 years old, running towards me with skinned knees after falling off his bicycle. I saw him at 12, hugging me tight the day his father died, promising we'd always be together. I saw him at 25, introducing me to Caroline with that nervous smile, asking me to treat her like a daughter. I opened my eyes again. The reality was this: a phone vibrating in the dark, a voice demanding money as if it were my obligation. As if I were an ATM without feelings or needs of my own. Mom, for the love of God, say something. I need that money now. My account is empty because we just paid for the trip and the shows. I thought your card had enough of a limit. You've always had money to help us. You can't abandon me like this. My hand tightened around the phone, the warm plastic pressing into my palm. Outside I heard the distant bark of a dog, the hum of a car passing on the wet street. It must have rained while I slept. The scent of damp earth drifted in through the window. I thought about all the times I had sent money, the signed checks, the transfers made at 3 in the afternoon on any given Tuesday, the envelopes handed over with a smile that was never reciprocated. I thought about Julian and Caroline's wedding 15 years ago, when I paid for the entire country club reception because they wanted something elegant. $15,000 taken from my savings, from the money Arthur and I had put away for our old age. I remembered writing that check, sitting at my kitchen table, the pen trembling slightly in my hand. Julian had hugged me and said, Mom, you are the best. I promise we will make it up to you. They never did. After that came the down payment on their house. $30,000 I paid when Julian arrived, telling me they had found the perfect colonial in the suburbs, but the bank required a larger down payment. It's an investment, Mom. It's our future. Caroline is pregnant with Mia. We need space for our family. I paid. I always paid. The new car when theirs broke down, $8,000. The living room furniture, because what they had was already outdated, $4,000. The trip to Europe for their 10-year anniversary, $6,000. The high-end laptop Julian needed for his work, $2,500. Mia's private school uniforms and tuition, thousands and thousands of dollars every year. And here I was, in my 2-bedroom apartment where the heater sometimes failed in winter, with my 12-year-old television that had a green line in the corner, with my refrigerator that had been making a strange noise since last summer, but kept running so I didn't replace it, with my comfortable shoes bought on clearance, because the others hurt my feet, but I couldn't bring myself to spend $150 on new ones. Mom, are you hearing me or not? The manager is losing patience. Caroline is hysterical. This is your responsibility. You gave me that authorized user card. You told me to use it in emergencies. Well, this is an emergency. Call your wife, I said. My voice came out calm, almost indifferent. I hung up before hearing his response. I turned off the phone, placing it face down on the nightstand. I lay back down, adjusted the pillow, and closed my eyes. The silence returned to my room like a soft blanket. I felt my heart beating slowly, steady, strong. I fell asleep thinking about the coffee I was going to make tomorrow, the toast with strawberry jam I'd bought on Saturday, the show I'd missed tonight. I slept without guilt. I slept deeply. I slept like I hadn't slept in years. I woke with sunlight streaming through the window. It was 8 light in the morning. I stretched slowly, feeling my bones creak with that familiar sound of 72 years well lived. I got up, put on the brown slippers Mia had given me 2 Christmases ago, and walked to the kitchen. I put water on to boil for my coffee. The smell comforted me, bringing me back to Arthur, bringing back quiet Sundays when we were young, and the world seemed full of promises. While I waited for the water to boil, I looked out my kitchen window. Mrs. Higgins from the apartment across the way was walking her poodle, like every morning. An orange tabby cat walked along the fence with that perfect balance only cats have. The sky was clear, that deep azure color that promised a hot day. I made my coffee with 2 spoonfuls of sugar, just the way I liked it. I took out the bread I'd bought yesterday, toasted it lightly, spread butter and jam. I sat at my small round table, the one Arthur and I had bought at a flea market 30 years ago. The wood was worn, stained in places no cleaning product had been able to remove, but it was mine, it was ours. I ate slowly, chewing every bite. I savored my coffee. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't check the phone I'd left turned off. I just enjoyed this moment of silence. This moment where no one asked me for anything. No one demanded anything. No one made me feel that my only function in this world was to open my wallet. I finished my breakfast. I washed the dishes, drying each one with care, putting them in their place. Everything had an order in my kitchen, a system I had perfected during decades of living alone. Arthur died 20 years ago. 20 years of learning to be by myself, of cooking for one, of sleeping in a bed that felt too big, of making decisions without consulting anyone. 20 years of being the mom who solves problems. 20 years of being my son's personal bank. I turned on the phone. I expected this. 37 missed calls, 22 text messages. All from Julian, some from Caroline. I didn't even open them. I knew exactly what they said. Pleas, demands, guilt. The perfect recipe to make me feel like the worst mother in the world. I left the phone on the table and walked to my bedroom. I opened the closet, that small space where I kept my clothes organized by color. I took a shoebox from the top shelf. There were no shoes inside. There were papers, documents, memories that hurt. I sat on the bed with the box in my lap. I opened the lid slowly, as if there were something fragile inside. A few days later, I was still processing everything. I had booked a last-minute trip, a small escape to Santa Fe, New Mexico, a place I'd always dreamed of visiting but never allowed myself the luxury. I needed to clear my head, to find the Eleanor who wasn't just a mother or a bank. When I returned, I knew they would be waiting. I opened the door slowly. No rush. I breathed deep, preparing myself. Julian and Caroline stood in front of me. Julian's face was red with fury. Caroline's eyes were swollen from crying. Behind them were suitcases. They had come straight from the airport. Julian spoke first, his voice a contained scream. "How could you, Mom? How could you leave us stranded like that? Do you have any idea what we went through? Do you have any idea of the humiliation?" "Good morning, Julian. Good morning, Caroline. Come in." They remained standing, unmoving. They expected an apology. They expected tears. They expected the mom who always caved. They did not expect this calm. "Are you going to let us in or what?" Caroline said with a cutting voice. I stepped aside. They entered, pushing their suitcases. They stood in the middle of my living room, looking at me as if I were a stranger. And perhaps I was. Perhaps the Eleanor they knew no longer existed. "Sit down," I told them. "We need to talk." "We don't want to sit," Julian said. "We want an explanation. We want to know what the hell happened to you. Why did you decide to ruin our vacation? Why did you decide to make us look like criminals?" I sat in my armchair. I looked at them. I really saw them for the first time in a long while. Julian with his expensive clothes, his brand-name shoes, his watch that I knew cost more than $2,000. Caroline with her designer bag, her expensive sunglasses on her head, her ivory dress probably more than what I spent on clothes in a year. I saw them and I saw two people who had never had to worry about money, who had never had to choose between paying the electric bill or buying medicine, who had never had to wear the same clothes for years, because they couldn't afford new ones. Julian paced from one side of my living room to the other like a caged animal, his steps heavy, furious. Caroline sat on the edge of the sofa, with her arms crossed, looking at me with that expression of superiority she had always had, as if I were the maid who had committed an unforgivable error. "I am going to ask you one more time, Mom," Julian said, stopping in front of me. "Why didn't you send the money? Why did you leave us locked up there like criminals? What kind of mother does that?" I adjusted myself in my armchair. I crossed my hands on my lap. I looked them in the eye without blinking. My voice came out calm, firm, without a tremor. "The kind of mother who is tired. The kind of mother who finally realized she has spent 15 years being used. The kind of mother who decided her life matters, too." "Used," Caroline repeated with a bitter laugh. "How dramatic, Eleanor. No one has used you. You have helped your family because that is how it is done. Because that is what mothers do." "Mothers also deserve respect, Caroline. They also deserve consideration. They also deserve to be treated like people and not cash dispensing machines." "Oh, please," she said, rolling her eyes. "You have always had more than enough. You have always been able to help us. Why now, all of a sudden, do you turn into this selfish person?" I got up from the armchair. I walked to my bedroom. They stayed in the living room, not knowing what to do. I returned with the shoebox, the box containing all the receipts, all the checks, all the evidence of 15 years of giving without receiving. I put the box on the coffee table. I opened it. I took out the papers one by one, laying them on the table, forming a mosaic of sacrifice. Do you see this? This is the check for your wedding, $15,000. This is the receipt for the down payment on your house, $30,000. This is the transfer for the car, $8,000. This is the trip to Europe, $1,000. This is the laptop, the furniture, the tuitions, the emergencies, the vacations, the whims. Julian approached the table. He looked at the papers with a furrowed brow. Caroline remained on the sofa, but I could see her face change color. I kept taking out papers. I kept putting evidence on the table. Each receipt was a stab in my heart, but it was also a liberation. It was the truth exposed. It was the reality I never wanted to face. And $20,000, I said finally. That is what I have given you in 15 years. $120,000 that came out of my pension, from your father's savings, from the life insurance that was supposed to protect my old age. Julian picked up one of the papers. He looked at it as if it were the first time seeing it. Maybe it was. Maybe he never stopped to think where the money came from. Maybe for him it was always something infinite, something that simply existed without consequence. Mom, he started to say, but I interrupted him. Do you know how many times you have invited me to dinner at your house in these 15 years, Julian? 3 times. 3 times in 15 years. Do you know how many times you have called me just to ask how I am without asking for anything? I can count them on one hand. Do you know when was the last time I received a birthday gift that wasn't bought in a rush at a gas station? I don't remember because it has been too many years. That isn't fair, Caroline said, standing up from the sofa. We have busy lives. We have responsibilities. We can't be calling you all the time. But you can call me when you need money. Then you have time. Then you remember I exist. Julian dropped the paper on the table. He ran his hands through his hair. I saw something in his face I hadn't seen before. Was it shame? Was it guilt? I wasn't sure. Mom, I know we have depended on you a lot, I admit it. But I always thought you did it because you wanted to. You never told me it bothered you. You never said no. And that is the problem, Julian. I never said no because I was afraid. Afraid you would stop calling. Afraid you would cut me out of your life. Afraid of being completely alone. So I kept sacrificing, kept giving, kept shrinking myself until there was almost nothing left. Caroline scoffed. So this is about you then? This is about your feelings? Yes, Caroline. For once, this is about me. For once I am choosing myself. I took a deep breath. I am done. I am done being your ATM. I am done being taken for granted. I am done with this dynamic. Julian looked at me, his eyes wide. What are you saying? Mom? I am saying that I am closing the bank, effective immediately. You are both adults. You have jobs. You have a beautiful daughter. It's time you stood on your own 2 feet. My card is no longer available for your emergencies or your whims. My savings are for my old age, as Arthur and I intended. Not for your luxury vacations. Silence filled the room, thick and heavy. Caroline's jaw was clenched. Julian just stared at the mosaic of receipts on the coffee table. I love you, Julian, I said. My voice softer now, but still firm. And I love Mia very much. But love doesn't mean endless sacrifice. Love means respect, and I demand that respect now. Caroline finally spoke, her voice low. So that's it? You're just cutting us off? I am setting boundaries. If you want a relationship with me, it will be a healthy one. One where we both give and receive. One where you don't just see me as a source of money. Julian finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine. There was a flicker of something new there, a hint of understanding. Mom, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now. Just think about it. Really think about it. I stood up, walked to the coffee table, and began to gather the receipts, placing them back into the shoebox. Julian and Caroline watched me, silent. When I was done, I walked to the door. I think it's time for you to go. They hesitated. Then Julian nodded slowly. He picked up his suitcase. Caroline followed, still looking stunned. They walked out without another word. I closed the door behind them, a profound sense of peace washing over me. The quiet in my apartment was no longer lonely. It was liberating. The next few weeks were a strange mix of relief and apprehension. Julian didn't call. Caroline didn't call. I missed Mia, but I knew this was a necessary silence. I spent my days reading, walking in the park, enjoying simple pleasures. I even started painting again, a hobby I'd abandoned years ago. Then a text message arrived, from Julian. It was short. Mom, Mia misses you. She wants to know if you'd like to have dinner with us this Saturday. Just us. No demands, just dinner. My heart fluttered. This was it, the first step. I replied immediately. Yes, Julian, I'd love that. The invitation to Santa Fe had been a gift to myself, a journey of rediscovery. I packed light, leaving behind the weight of expectations and guilt. I hiked the red rock trails, visited art galleries, and sat in quiet cafes, sipping coffee and writing in a small journal. I met wonderful people, shared stories, and laughed freely. For the first time in years, I saw myself in the mirror and recognized the woman I used to be. The one Arthur fell in love with. The one full of life and dreams. I even bought a small wooden owl, a symbol of wisdom and intuition, to remind me of this new chapter. I landed at the airport at sunset, retrieved my bag, and walked out to the arrivals area. There was Julian, and next to him was Mia, both holding balloons that said welcome home. I ran toward them. The three of us hugged, a long, tight, real hug. Mia told me I looked radiant. Julian told me I looked 10 years younger. I told them I felt reborn. In the car on the way home, I told them everything. I showed them photos. I talked about my new friends. I talked about the places I saw. I talked about the Eleanor I rediscovered. They took me to my apartment. Julian carried my suitcase all the way up. Mia opened the windows to let in fresh air. Both stayed for a while. We drank tea. We ate the biscochitos Annie's cookies I brought from Santa Fe. We talked. We laughed. We were family. Before leaving, Julian reminded me, dinner is this Saturday, Mom, at my house at 7 La. You don't have to bring anything, just you. I will be there, Julian. I promise. They left. I stayed alone in my apartment. But this loneliness was different. It wasn't emptiness. It was fullness. It was peace. It was freedom. I unpacked slowly. I took out my dirty clothes. I took out the gifts. I took out the wooden owl. I put it on my nightstand next to Arthur's photo. They looked good together, the past and the present. I showered. I put on my pajamas. I got into bed. I closed my eyes. I thought about everything that had happened since that call at 2:00 in the morning. I thought about the pain. I thought about the decision. I thought about the transformation. I thought about the Eleanor I was, the one who said yes to everything, the one who sacrificed without limit. That Eleanor no longer exists. She died sometime in the last few weeks, and that was okay. I thought about the Eleanor I was now, the one who set boundaries, the one who valued herself. This Eleanor was just being born, but she was already stronger. She was already clearer. She was already more real. I opened my eyes. I looked at the ceiling. I spoke out loud as if Arthur could hear me. I did it, my love. I finally did it. I finally put myself first. Saturday arrived. I got ready with care. I put on a peach-colored dress I'd bought in Santa Fe. I did my hair. I put on perfume. I looked in the mirror. I looked good. I looked happy. I looked dignified. I arrived at Julian's house at 7 sharp. I knocked on the door. Julian opened. He was wearing an apron. It smelled of home cooking. He hugged me. Welcome, Mom. I entered. The table was set. There were flowers in the center. Candles were lit. Mia was helping in the kitchen. Caroline was sitting in the living room. She looked uncomfortable, but she stood up when I entered. Hello, Eleanor, she said, with a neutral voice. Hello, Caroline, I responded with the same tone. The dinner was delicious. Julian cooked roast chicken with rosemary and roasted vegetables. He made rice. He made a salad. Everything was perfect. We ate together. At first the conversation was tense, forced, but little by little it softened. Mia talked about her classes. Julian talked about a new project at work. He talked about how he was learning to manage his money better, how they sold the luxury SUV and bought a sensible sedan, how they were eating at home more. Even Caroline talked a little. She said she started looking for a job, that she had been at home too long, that she needed something of her own. She didn't look at me when she said this, but she said it, and it was something. After dinner, we stayed in the living room. I drank tea. They drank coffee. I showed them the printed photos from Santa Fe. I told them stories behind every image. When I left, Julian walked me to the car. Thanks for coming, Mom. I know it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, Julian, but it was important, and I am willing to keep trying if you are too. I am, Mom. I promise you, we are going to be a better family. I hugged him one last time. I drove home with a full heart. It wasn't perfect. There was still pain. There was still work to do, but there was hope. There was possibility. There was real love trying to bloom. That night before sleeping, I wrote in my journal. I wrote about the trip. I wrote about the dinner. I wrote about everything I had learned. And at the end I wrote this. Today I do not need permission to live. Today I do not need to sacrifice myself to be loved. Today, I understand that true love does not cost everything. True love gives and receives. True love respects and values. I closed the journal. I turned off the light. I fell asleep smiling. Tomorrow was a new day, and I was a new Eleanor. An Eleanor who finally loved herself as much as she loved others. An Eleanor who was finally alive.